Meeting of the Fargo Board of Education to order. Thanks for being here. First of all, I'd accept a motion for the approval of the agenda. Jim?
I move adoption of the agenda with the addition of an HR addendum to be added on to item 6B.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. It's approved. Tonight we have a number of interesting things on the agenda that should be educational for the whole board and the administration as well. And I'm pleased that we get to start tonight with Rachel, who's going to talk to us about the strategic plan in action. And I know you have some guests, and this is going to be great. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you very much. Tonight we have some visitors here from Jefferson Elementary School, and they are going to share some of the work that they've done in their upper grades with the Chromebook pilot. And we have Mr. Louis Lauer, who is here. He is the media specialist at Jefferson, and his principal, Brad Franklin, and fifth grade teacher, Allie, and they are here with several students, and parents are here to view this as well. And they practiced today with their peers and are very excited to share some of the projects they've been doing with the PBL at Jefferson. So Louis, if you would like to start, or Brad?
Fifth grade classroom has a Chromebooks for every student. So each student has a Chromebook. The last couple of years we've been short one section, and those Chromebooks were still built into the grant, and those have filtered down to the third, second, and even first grade this year. So they've experienced Chromebooks as well. I also want to just compliment our teachers. It's been extra training. They've been part of tech camp. They've gone to some PD sessions out of town. And they've really worked with Louis Lauer. When you think of a media specialist nowadays, Louis he'd be a great example of what we want that to look like in our district. He's a leader for this initiative in our building, providing PD. Even myself, everything's Google Docs, so he's moving my cheese a little bit as we go through. But he's really expanded out to other classrooms, other teachers, as far as what technology can do. So tonight you're going to see how really technology helps us meet the 21st century skills, and then goal 3 of that first initiative in this strategic plan, integrating technology. So, Louis Lauer.
Hello, and thank you for having us tonight. My name is Louis Lauer. I'm the Library Media Specialist at Jefferson, and I have 3 of our 5th grade students here tonight. I have Olivia Lockwood. I had to look and see who was next to me. I have Olivia Lockwood, Malila Straw, and Luni Vasuba, who did a project collaboratively together this year and are going to present that to you tonight. There's a couple things I would like to share with you first before I have them go and present. And it's just a little bit of background on this pilot that's on the screen. This was a transformation grant from ETC. And this was received in the spring of 2014. We purchased approximately 125 Chromebooks and 6 Chromebook carts and launched in October. This was a one-to-one initiative for 4th and 5th grade, and as Mr. Franklin had said, because we were down a section, we also had the opportunity to be able to have a cart that has traveled down to other grade levels as well. The initial goal is really to be able to improve the use of technology and data and resources to meet learning outcomes and implement and expand that project-based learning, or the PBL elements in our school. So bringing those contextual, context-rich projects into our schools and into our learning environment. So PBLs can be large, they can be small, and this one that I'm going to show you today is actually a smaller PBL that we did with our 5th graders. Every 2nd through 5th grade in this district in an elementary goes through what's called the AUP, the Appropriate Use Policy, and that is what's required for them to be on the networks here in Fargo Public Schools. And so by the time they get to 5th grade, that review can kind of become it's pretty similar to the year before. And so one thing that I was trying to think of was a way that we can really ratchet up the rigor for these fifth graders and really think about application instead of just review from the year before. So here's the question that I posed to them, and it was, what are the three most important elements of the appropriate use policy for young students to understand? They did this collaboratively. They were to meet with a group of 3 to 5 students and discuss and then develop a presentation. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to them.
This is our second grade AUP project. Our first one was I will use the internet and computers for educational purposes only. What does this mean? That I will only use internet and computers at school for educational websites. An example, you do not want to use YouTube, Facebook, or email, and you would use it for tests or educational games.
I will only share my password with my teacher or parent. What does this mean? This means I will not share my password with my best friend, even if you trust them. Example, Johnny just got his new password. His best friend asked him what it was, and he said, "It's a secret," said Johnny. Okay, then he walked away.
I will not send any personal information about me or anyone else. What does this mean? I will not tell anyone information like my password or address. Example, any of your passwords or pictures, address, or your phone number.
And the last page is then their source list. When students put together this project, it was also important that they show that they are responsibly and ethically using picture content, and so we provided a way for them to put together a source list as well. Side note on any other projects that chose the rule about sharing passwords, we did see a lot of kids named Kobe and LeBron. I don't know if that's actually their best friends, but we did see those as well. I did have a couple questions, and I wanted you to hear a little bit more from them. I do have a couple questions that we talked about that I'm going to ask them now. I'm going to start with, say, Olivia, what steps did you take to decide which 3 were the most important? Tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, first we reviewed the AUP on the Google Classroom.
Can you tell us a little bit about the classroom? What is the classroom?
The Classroom is a website where teachers can post, assignments. Students can also complete this assignments and turn them in.
So, Olivia, can teachers give grades on Classroom and provide feedback?
Yes, they can.
We really at Jefferson have found that embracing the Google Classroom has really been a unique way to kind of go in that digital route for our instruction with our students, to provide an online environment for kids to access resources, but also to be able to interact with each other in a digital environment and turn in work that way as well. Tell us, Olivia, past looking at the AUP, then what was your next step?
Then we picked some that were the most important, and we talked about them as a group.
Was it kind of tricky, Olivia, thinking about second grade and what you needed to tell second graders?
Yeah, it was kind of hard because we had to figure out which words were a little bit harder for them to understand and what things they might not understand.
The thing I do appreciate about something that's in a project-based learning opportunity is that it's providing a context for students, so they're really thinking about that audience piece and engaging them in the information in a little bit different way, as you heard Olivia talk about. Luniva, can you tell us a little bit about the process, or the tools that we used to put our presentations together?
We used Google Slides to make the presentation, and you told us what information needed to be on each slide.
Just so that you know, Dr. Ager gave me permission to use this, so. Kirby, it's okay, okay? In Google Slides, Luniva, what did you use to find the pictures, and how did you know those were pictures that you could use?
Went to research tools, and we change it to filtered.
What Luniva is talking about is this research helpful with our kids as we're looking for information or looking for pictures. And then students and filter. Right now, nothing is filtered by license, but now you can filter so that you can get images or information that's free. Malila, what did you find that was valuable about this kind of project? What was different from how we had approached the AUP before?
Well, it was different because we got to make some choices. You gave us the information that we could use, and we picked which ones we wanted to use and how to present it.
I just wanted to show you a couple other pieces. PBLs come in lots of different forms at Jefferson. They come in small groups and large groups. One thing I'm working on right now is some fifth grade book talks that eventually I think we will put together on a school website that we can use as a whole school to have that information from our fifth graders talking about books. But also I'm toying with putting these little QR codes in the books as well, so that as a student is looking at a book, they can see that recommendation from another student. Here's a short fifth grade book talk that a student did about a book they had just recently read.
My book is Anything But Typical by Nora Raleigh Baskin. Do you know what it's like to be autistic? 12-year-old Jason Blake does. No one really understands Jason Blake, but Phoenix Bird does. Phoenix Bird name is Rebecca. She has an account on the same online account that Jason has. This website allows users to post stories. Jason really wants to meet Phoenix Bird, but he's afraid that if they meet Phoenix Bird, she will only see his autism, not who Jason really is. If you like realistic fiction books, this would be a book for you.
So using a tool like WeVideo or some of the other video making sources with a Chromebook, we can take that book report and bring it into something that we can use with other kids, like a book talk. In other grade levels, I got it right the second time, Kirby. Thank you. In other grade levels, we've seen just really a lot of use of the Chromebooks. You can see in the bottom a picture of some of our first graders. And it's not the best quality picture, but if you look closely, you can see all the way to the back, you have students engaged in note-taking. Yes, that's note-taking in the first grade. And the only reason that we're able to do that is because we have Pebble Go, which is a really wonderful early research tool for students that has language support, has audio support for the students. And because we have the Chromebooks, we can go individually with that, and we did a lot of modeling with the kind of note-taking we're looking for as researchers, and it was a really, really positive experience. So all the way through our school, whether it's a whole group in research in first grade or writing projects in the third grade or small group, which we're seeing a lot of work in third through fifth grade. This has really been a tool that, when we've embraced, has really been transformative for our practices and for learning with our kids. So. That's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions that you have for me, Mr. Franklin, or the kids that I have with?
Thank you, Louis and Brad, and and students. This is a great presentation. I'm just curious about, you're talking first grade on in some of these applications, and I'm just curious, from your perspective, how far behind are some students who don't have early childhood education, and how quickly can they catch up with the rest of their peers, if that is their reality?
You mean in terms of technology, in terms of?
No, I mean in terms of like early childhood education, preschool, or learning environments before they come into the formal system.
I think we see the biggest difference in vocabulary right now in literacy. So when they come to Jefferson often, if they're not in any early childhood, a lot of our students maybe that come from poverty aren't exposed to the vocabulary and that literacy, so they are extremely far behind. So we have to set goals for them to make progress, but it's a huge deficit when they come into school.
And Mr. President, if I might continue with the principal, does this technology help accelerate that catching up in your mind, or are we getting there? Or do you see things unfolding in that capacity where the use of the technologies bridges that gap sooner than maybe it would have been without the technology?
Well, Mr. Lauer will like this answer. I think the biggest thing, and if we work with our leaders in literacy, one thing is getting just print in front of them and text in front of them, and then really having conversations with them. I think that's the number one thing I've learned being at Jefferson that they're lacking that we need to do. But also technology, I think, is it really motivates them. And I do see a lot of our families come in and they do know technology, whether it's through a phone. So how we can build technology in will help, but I think just that conversational language, and we do a lot of small group instruction, and then getting print in front of them, because they're how to hold a book, how to, what a book is. That's something that we try to do at a really early stage. And in the past, we probably worked on what a letter, really broken it down to letter and letter sounds. But if they're not familiar with what is putting it all together and knowing what it all means, they really struggle with that. So now we're starting more with print and then working backwards from there. So.
Any other questions or comments? Louis, anything else you wanted to add to that?
I do think that, I think Brad hit it. I think that as much access to text, conversation about text, writing about text makes huge difference. One thing that technology does offer is then also support of that text, whether it's audio support or language support of that text. And there's lots of really wonderful resources that we have available district-wide, as well as other resources that we can tap into that provide some additional support as well, and provide another degree of individualization, I think, whether at a small group level or at an individual level.
Brad?
And I know when the pilot came in, one question we had was AUP violations and how do we manage all this. And I will say that we've had, very few AUP violations that we've had to deal with the one-on-one technology initiative at Jefferson. We have had a couple, but we've always had a few. So that really hasn't changed how students have been responsible using technology. They really have been responsible. And like tonight, it's been a good opportunity then to have our students share with younger grade levels how do we interact responsibly with technology. So it's been a positive having the technology in the building.
Rachel?
I would just add one thing that I had talked to this team about promoting, and Louis didn't add it in, is the idea of the shift from being a librarian to a media specialist and the power of collaboration. He was kind of teasing Miss Miller at dinner time of all the things he'd signed her up for and building confidence in her with her technology skills. And you can walk into Jefferson and Louis will have a small group of kids. He does a reading before school with kids. He's out in classrooms. And it's really a collaborative team, and it's across the district. It's not just in Jefferson, but he's really taking a lead, and it's been a very powerful team. Lots to be applauded, so thank you for all of your work.
Yeah. Just like in our In our library, you'll see flat screen TV. He uses Apple TV, the iPad. Kids can go to the iPad to look at books and check them out, research them. He's carrying it around, helping them. Every day, or a couple days a week, he teaches 2 fifth grade small group reading classes in the library. So he takes some higher fifth graders out of the classroom and does small group reading with them. So next Monday, he's going to do 2 sessions on technology, some PD sessions for our teachers on different applications with Google. So you're right, it's really transformed the role of the media specialist in Fargo Public Schools. So he's a great resource throughout the building, and teachers really come to him for support. And then when you're looking for him, often you have to go to the classroom as he's co-teaching with teachers, because that's kind of where that role is headed. So it's been a great opportunity at Jefferson. So thank you.
Thank you. I can only imagine that the rest of the board would say what a treat it is to have active and energetic students show up, and administration and staff who look like they're doing a great job. And I can bet, Brad, that you probably want to hang on to Louis, huh?
We stole him from Moorheads.
Okay, good. And the other people who work with him as well. And it's also very nice that we have some parents and other people who are able to come when their kids are here tonight, too. Any other comments? Go ahead, Dr. Schatz.
Just wanted to follow up with the strategic plan, because this is really an example of the strategic plan going all the way down into the grade levels. And as we see these kinds of projects with these young people, as they grow older and go through the system, you're only going to see better and better and better with the depth and the rigor and all the different things that go on with these PBLs. And so, and a big component to this is the demonstration, coming out and presenting. And so for these young people to come forward and to do this, it's courageous, because it's a little scary, but they do a great job. And the experience they're getting now is only going to serve them very well in the future. So it's exciting for me to see this in action, because it's exciting to think about where we're going to be 10 years from now with these kinds of things. Very purposeful group activities, not the old types of group activities that people always refer back to. So hats off to you, Louis, and to our teachers at Jefferson, and Brad, and to you students for the good work that you're doing over at Jefferson. Thank you.
Very good. Any other last comments before we move on? Okay, thanks again for being here. We got some fun pictures of you guys that I suspect that Anne Marie will be sharing with you as we go forward. Are we moving on to the 21st Century Learning Grant? Or that was the whole thing. Okay, we didn't have to go on that. Thank you again for being here. I also want to take a minute and recognize the fact that we do have all of our board members here tonight, including Linda, who's joining us from the Twilight Zone via the telephone. So that's good. Hi, Linda. A muffled groan there. That was good. Okay. Thanks, Linda. At this point, we're going to take a minute and see if we have anyone in the audience who wish to speak or present before the board. You haven't signed up, but you may not have known the yes, I did. You may not have known the rules with regard to that, so if there is anyone in the audience who wishes to speak right now, well, let us know. Otherwise, we're going to presume that we can go on because no one had signed up. Okay, we'll move on to that. And now we're going to move on to staff reports, and we get to go to you for our first FEA report.
Hello. I'd like to recognize 3 individuals tonight. Every year, Horace Mann Insurance and FEA give out the Crystal Apple Award to our members for doing excellence and recognizing excellence throughout education in FPS. So our 3 winners this year so far, one is Elizabeth Olson. She's a 2nd grade teacher at Kennedy. I'm just going to read a little bit about the winners from the nominator, what they've said about them. Beth is always looking for ways to support student achievement. She's always the first one to volunteer for professional development in order to find new ways to engage students and improve student achievement. She's very creative and has many great ideas and to present information. She has great STEM ideas for her 2nd graders to help them with critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. She is truly an amazing teacher who cares for her children and helps guide her children to do their best. Another winner this year is Mary Miller. She is an office assistant at Washington Elementary. Because of her positive and friendly attitude, students feel comfortable coming to the office for assistance in any situation. She's especially sensitive to students who are sick or injured. When students bring a project to the office to show us, she encourages them to continue to do good work. She goes out of her way to assist teachers, students, and parents. She's always positive and has a smile on her face in a difficult situation. Mary makes the school climate very friendly. And our third winner this year is Melanie Van Solen. She is a language arts teacher at Carl Bin. This teacher is truly dedicated to all students. She spends time before and after school working with students. She has even started a book club open to all students of the school to help promote reading for enjoyment while still working on decoding and understanding skills. Our building motto is great relationships make great students. She embodies this motto by treating all students in the building with respect. She is well-liked and respected by all students and staff. And I just think these three individuals have done an outstanding job this year and other years for Fargo Public Schools and for education. I'd like to congratulate them. They get a little Crystal Apple plaque, and so I just congratulate those three for that. And we'll have future winners in the months ahead. And that's all I have, so thank you.
Thanks for that report. Okay, we're going to move on to two important segments in our agenda tonight. The first one, Dr. Gross is going to be talking to us about the Student Mobility Report and memo number 89 that you have in your packet for tonight. Dr. Bob?
Thank you very much. What you'll see from this report, this is our mobility report. We'll do one now and then one at the end of the year. This is from the beginning of the school year until the end of the first semester. So we ended the data collection January 16th. The data that we're providing for you is students who either enter our district or who have left our district. It does not include those who are moving from building to building within the Fargo Public Schools. That would be another set of data. As you open or you look at the report, if you turn to page 2, you will see that during that time period, we had a total of 821 students transfer into the district since the first day of school, about 914 who transferred out. This year we provided you a comparison so you can see last year's data compared to this year's data, and it's very similar in the number of students transferring in and out. And then on the bottom of page 2, we just gave you a graphic that shows you that by the 3 different grade bands, elementary, middle school, and high school. As you turn to page 3, what we've provided for you is a breakdown of those students who transferred in or out at the elementary level. So as you look at that first chart on the top of page 3, of the 506 students at the elementary level who transferred in, you can see where they came from. If you look at the dark blue and the dark red, those are basically from North Dakota. So you can see about 42% of those transfer in were from North Dakota. The dark green and the dark purple then are from Minnesota, and that's about 22%. The reason there's 2 different colors is the dark purple is from Moorhead, and the dark green is from someplace else in Minnesota. And then finally, the last 2, you see someplace other than North Dakota and Minnesota or from our private schools. Those same color schemes follow the rest of the document. So as you look at middle school or high school, you can follow that same pattern. And then on the bottom of that page, you can see the elementary students who transferred out, the 464 students. Page 4 and 5 provide that same information for middle school students transferring in and out. This gives us a sense of how mobile of a district we truly are. As you can see from the beginning of the school year, almost a little over 800 students moving in and the same amount moving out. At the end of the year, we will provide the same data, plus we will add to that any of the students who may have dropped out. That's one additional piece of data that we add on the last mobility report. This information will be shared with our building principals, and since many of them look at the agenda ahead of time, many have already asked, can I get this information just for my building? And we will be providing that to our buildings as well, so that they can see and share with their staff that mobility.
Dr. Gross, just a point of clarification, then we'll take some questions here. How do you treat kindergarten students who are new? Are they considered part of the transferring in?
What we do after the first day of school, any kindergarten student who transfers in or out would be in this data. If they enrolled before that first day of school, they're not in this data set.
Thank you. And Robin?
Similar question, I just wanted to clarify that the first day of school was August 26th. So this
Correct.
doesn't count new students or departing students over the summer. It's since the first day of school started.
That is correct.
And that's how we continue to gain students every year, even though a couple more leave during the school year.
Right, and this is a moving target
Right.
each and every day. If you would look at this same set of data today, it would be different than it was when we ran this. For example, I know since the beginning of February, if you would look at this data, we have actually have a net gain of about 40 students,
Okay.
both in and out. So it changes each and every day.
Any other questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Gross, I'm just curious to gain a better understanding of it on a couple fronts. The references to private schools, and this, I'll follow up with this, but if you have a school category for private schools in and or out, does that mean that the other categories aren't potentially private schools also, or are they local private schools, or for my first question?
Those are our local private schools,
So like in Fargo?
Fargo and or Moorhead.
Okay, thank you. And what I'm curious about is, even though these numbers are probably pretty small, relatively speaking, there are a smaller number coming in from private schools than go out to private schools, especially in the middle school category. Are there any trends going on or not, or any things? I'm just curious, the bigger picture about public school, private schools, transitions or migration issues, and if there's any shifts over time or not.
If you would look at this same report from last year, the percentages are fairly similar from those categories. So there really wouldn't be a large or dramatic increase or decrease in those numbers. We see that as a fairly typical pattern.
John, just another comment to follow up on that. Really, this report is a great report, but it only presents part of the information with regard to your question, because really, if someone from a private school came to our district before the first day of school, they would not be included in this. And I would think a great number of people who make that decision know that before the first day of the year. And so what we're looking at is a portion of the data, which is interesting, and it's apples to apples because we take a look at it every year, but a big part of the data came before the first day of the school year.
Correct.
Any other questions? Dave?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Gross, what does our enrollment stand at now, up or down? How many people?
If we go to today, we are down 93 students K through 12.
From this
Oh,
point
I'm
last
sorry,
year?
excuse me. 93 students was what is in this report. Since that time, we have added those 40 students, so it's 53 students that we are down. But again, that changes each and every day, and that's at this time K through 12, 53.
Dr. Schatz?
We do a monthly enrollment report, and you can access that on the website. And so the comparative there is to look at where were we last year at this time. And so this here just gives you a sense of how many people are coming and going. And so I would suggest you go to that and take a look at that if you want to see the comparative, because we're still up about 100 students or so. Yeah, from the beginning of the year. If you look at this time last year, we always have attrition. There's always attrition from the first day. It's really difficult because everybody wants that first day enrollment count, and it takes about 2 to 3 weeks before you really get the true enrollment count, because people have registered, maybe they don't show up, those types of things, and so it always sorts itself and goes down a little bit. But if you compare to the year before, it'll give you the true number. And so we still are in that 100 to 150, just like we've been talking, and we anticipate that it'll continue to do that. And so, and I was, like Bob said, when we get to the second semester, we always have a surge, because people tend to move at that time. If they're going to make a move, they'll do it at that time. So at the high schools, middle schools in particular, you always have more enrollments. And so we went down initially, now we're back up about 40. It'll stabilize, and then it'll be what it'll be when we get to May. Yep.
Any other questions or comments or anything? Jennifer?
Is this pretty consistent, what you see in other districts as well, or is this unique to our area?
Very consistent. I would say that it's not unique to us. Yeah, people are mobile nowadays, and particularly with our state and all the different sectors and things going on with economies and jobs. And I would say out west, they may be seeing even a higher mobility rate right now, with students particularly leaving because the jobs aren't there right now. I know I talked to one superintendent, they were down 258 kids since the beginning of the year. So it kind of comes and goes, but since I've been here in Fargo, this has been very consistent, what you're seeing. We recalibrated the way that we account for mobility, so now we have 2 years of data. Because when we first started taking a look at it, when Bob and I took a look at it a couple years ago, we weren't comfortable with what it was. So I think we're getting a much more true picture right now. So it'll be interesting to see when we get to 3, 4, 5 years, you know, are we seeing the similar trends? Right now, in 2 years, we're seeing a very similar trend. So.
Thank you, Dr. Schatz. Any other last comments or questions? Dr. Gross, anything else to add? Okay, thank you for that report. And now we're going to move on to another interesting report. Dr. Schatz is going to be talking to us about the Financial Planning Task Force, and I think we may have some paperwork in front of us, so take it away, Dr. Schatz.
You'll find before you just a one sheet kind of summary of where we're at with the planning task force that you asked me to put together. And so what this provides you is a timeline of activity for that group. You can see there that we're going to have our first meeting on February 22nd. We have charted out 7 different dates for meetings. I'm not quite sure if we'll need all 7, but we did go ahead and schedule those. We went out and we've recruited a group of people. Right now we're at 39, the total number. What you see before you is 38, but add one more to the parent group. We made one last addition here as I walked in tonight. And so we have 10 parents, 10 teachers, 4 principals, 1 facilitator, 1 coordinator, a director, 2 support staff, and 5 students. And 2 of those 5 students are the 2 young ladies from Fargo South who had come forward and asked you to consider a proposal for students to be participating at a board level. I spent the time to go out to Fargo South, sit down, visit with them, and they're very excited to be part of this process. And actually, I think it'll be a much better learning experience for them overall to be engaged in a process like this. And so the other principals at the other high schools were able to find 1 student that agreed to be on this. So we will kick things off on the 22nd. The meeting agendas right now are tentative, but it gives us a little bit of a sense of where we're going to go. The first meeting will be spending quite a bit of time going through just all the data and the information that we need to kind of upload folks so that they can have the discussions. If you remember the strategic planning process, the long-range facility planning process, and those processes, it'll be very similar. And then as we get into the second and third meeting, we'll start to get into broader discussions. And my hope is that by the time we get to May, we can bring back to you a report from this group with their suggestions, recommendations, and observations of our current financial situation, our strategic planning, our standard of effort, and all the things that we're doing, and provide you the guidance that hopefully will be meaningful to you as you consider what we need to do in the future. So things are a go. We're ready. This week we'll be sending out a packet of information to these individuals so they have some time to review it. And I look forward to, once again, engaging with a group of folks to really take a look at what we're doing. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Anyone with questions? John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Dr. Schatz. This will be an interesting process to see unfold. I'm just curious, so that I have my sense of it. In this process, it would seem to me that, like, the chair of the planning committee or maybe the board president would be a good, at least a liaison to this process, or to have a board seat there. Is there thoughts behind why or why not on that?
I was under the understanding that the task force would be made up of a group of folks that were not board members, and that there would be a report that comes back to the board. We did that with the strategic plan. Certainly, we'll be out and posting these meetings, and any board member who would like to come and watch and visit and be part of and see what goes on at the meetings. But I wasn't under the impression that we were to assign a board member. So if that's different, then I need to know.
John?
And again, I'm not saying this critically. It's just a sense of, like, knowledge that somebody might have. Like, we have some board members who have been on the board for well over 10 years. and they might have some history that may not be as easily retrievable for the community folks, and that's all I'm just thinking is as well, or some sense of timing or things through times. But either way, I understand completely. But it's one of the thoughts I guess I would have approached you with.
John, that's certainly something that we could discuss tonight if you'd like to, and I think Dr. Schatz would, I don't mean to speak for him, but would probably say that whether we have a person there from the board or not will not necessarily change or color the composition of that committee. I think we all like the fact that it is made up of a diverse group of people from lots of different areas, and so I'm open as chairman tonight if anyone has any comments to make or if we'd like to make any suggestions for Dr. Schatz, because I think we can be very appreciative that Dr. Schatz has grabbed this particular question pretty firmly and is putting together a plan for us rather than, you know, just muddying through it. So, Dinah.
I agree with Dr. Schatz that the consensus was that this was supposed to be a community outreach task force that was going to bring back community input for the board in their deliberations and decisions and stuff going forward. So I don't think there's a need for a board member to be a speaking voice. We don't want our voice to overshadow the voice of the other populations on this task force. So I'm happy with the way it is. And again, as the invitation for any of us to sit in and watch whatever goes on, and I assume you'll update us in the same way as you did with the strategic plan as things go on, and you know we'd have access to the same materials to read that everybody else is getting. But I think it's important for it to be a community, not a board participated task force.
Any other comments, Rebecca? That was exciting.
Sorry, I'm glad that there's nothing in my cup. There was nothing in the cup to start
Sure.
with. Okay, so 2 questions. First, Dr. Schatz, did you say that you have the number of individuals that you feel you need on the task force, or are you looking for any more?
We feel that we're ready to go, so we have 39 right now, and we think that's the right number.
Okay, and the other item I would say is I'm in agreement also with what Dinah said. I think that if there are individuals that are needed in terms of additional information to share for resources, in terms of like presenting information. I know with the other task forces that Dr. Schatz has led, he's been very welcoming of the ideas of bringing in other individuals to present information if needed. And I'm not saying that that would be board members, but if I would imagine that if the task force members seem to be looking, you know, to get information from additional resources, that Dr. Schatz would bring that information to them to help them make their decisions. And thank you for your work on this, Dr. Schatz.
Thanks, Rebecca. Anyone else with comments to make? John.
I'll just chime in so I'll get the tone more clearly. Dr. Schatz works so closely with us. He knows the sentiment of the board. And you'd probably also have a sense of any surprises that you'd apprise us of or each other of. So with all that respect, I just was curious, that's all.
Thank you, John. If there aren't any other comments, I will make a comment in that I think it's great to agree, for example, with what Dinah said and Rebecca seconded and John thirded. But I do think it would be appropriate, just me, one person, thinking that if there are board members who would like to attend the meetings, I think that would be a good idea. Me personally, again, just one person saying that. They may not have an official capacity or anything like that, but I think we were all elected to do a number of things, and showing up at that meeting to observe, nothing wrong with that, as long as we remember our position and our place and go from there. And I know we will have some people who will show up at those meetings, right? We probably will. We usually do.
Paul?
Yes,
Paul?
Linda.
I just thank you for this, and I'd like to just chime in and echo what Dinah said in terms of not wanting our voices to, I think she used the word overshadow, but just skew it a little bit, because this group really is being convened as an advisor to us. And so, like Paul said, would certainly come when they can. But this has really been patterned after the strategic planning process, which worked so well. So I wish I could be there to thank Dr. Schatz in person for pulling this together, but I'm excited we're ready to move forward.
Thank you, Linda. Any other comments? Okay, I think we've covered it pretty well. Anything else you need to go over, Dr. Schatz?
No, we're ready to go, and I look forward to the process.
Great. That should be interesting to see how it all turns out and what kind of advice we get and where we're headed from there. With that, we are ready to consider the consent agenda. And Robin?
I move approval of the consent agenda with the HR addendum.
Great. Is there a second? John?
I second it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed, nay. Another unanimous vote in favor of that consent agenda. We're ready to move on to new business, and we're going to take a look at memo number 91. Jim is going to talk to us about the Operations Center bid approval. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Paul. Well, the good news is bids came back in very, very favorable for this project, probably as a result of really being the first major public works project out on the marketplace to get bids. And if you look behind the main tabular page, you'll see for just about every individual ticket item in the bid package, we had multiple bidders, which always helps sharpen pencils, obviously. This bid package was put together in anticipation that we might not get this favorable of bids. So we really, from the design team perspective, and when I say we, I'm not on the design team, but Brock and his design team, working with the architect, tried to identify if we don't come in favorable, what could be some give-ups? What things could we at least not do initially? So we had lots of different alternates built into this package. They weren't really enhancements. They were instead a safety valve if the bids didn't come back in line with what we had already approved as a general overall funding objective for this project. But I'm happy to say, based upon the bids that we got back, the administration and planning committee who reviewed this last week are of the mindset we should move forward with all the alternatives included in the package. And it comes to a grand total, including contingency, construction management, and architect fees of $9,239,138.30. And just to put that in perspective, we were anticipating that number would be at about 10.5 or almost 10.6 million. So very, very favorable bids. With that, before I open it up to questions, I'm going to actually put a motion on the floor that we approve the base bid award and all the alternates for the new operations center in the amount of $8,818,150.30, together with the construction management fee of 3.5%, the architect and engineer fee of 4.95%, a construction contingency fund of 2.25%, and $420,988 for fit-up furniture and fixtures, for a total award of $9,239,138.30, and direct the administration to award the contracts to the low bidders as identified in the attached bid summary.
It's been moved and seconded according to the recommendation, and we're now opening this for questions or comments. Robin or Jim?
I just wanted to get on it before I shared this, and then I'll certainly take any questions. Planning, along with Brock and his finance team, looked at how we might fund this overall project and thought we'd probably give you just some insights as to what we are anticipating doing with that. As you all know, we received two different pieces of money in the buyout of our current operations center, which is just behind this building. One was the actual buyout of the warehouse facility. The other was offset for the relocation costs. Those two combined pieces of money represent just a shade under $8 million. $7,990,000, I believe. We are recommending the differential, and again, it may not be the entire $9,239,000 because we have a contingency in there. Whether we'll need all of that or not, we don't know. We're recommending we actually take that out of the building fund balance, so there wouldn't be any bonded indebtedness, and we wouldn't be using any general fund revenue for this project whatsoever. We would use a small portion, well, it's not a small number, it's bigger than my checking account balance, but we would be using some of the nutrition services fund balance as well to purchase some of the new equipment that's going into the central kitchen. But the entire project would be paid for out of fund balances, plus the relocation dollars and the buyout dollars that we're receiving from the operations center that's being taken away from us.
Jim, do you want to clarify the subtraction of those two numbers, roughly how much we're talking about? Roughly.
We're talking about $265,000, I believe, out of the nutrition services fund balance, and $1.1 million out of the building fund balance.
Thank you.
For a total of $1,365,000 and change.
Great. Robin?
Three-part question, Jim. Thank you for asking where the financing would come from. Do we use construction managers, and if so, are they internal?
Go ahead, Brock, or Jim.
We certainly have one on this project. We typically do, for major projects of any size in the district, use a construction manager.
Okay. And then the operations that we are pulling into one building would include food services?
Go ahead, Brock.
Members of the board, Robin, it would include the central kitchen, the warehouse facility, which includes all of our shipping and receiving. It would include the entire trades operation, the print center, and the grounds maintenance shop as well.
So essentially, we're centralizing a lot of operations and saving some money on some other leases and things like that.
That is correct. We will be centralizing all of the operational functions outside of the district office itself under one roof.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
And by the way, speaking of saving on leases, what's our status of that, the transportation lease and so on?
Members of the board, Paul, I believe you're asking about the lease on the Kreider building.
I miscalled it, the transportation.
That lease is up in, I believe it's mid-year 2017. I have had conversations with the owner of that building, explained this project, how this project is coming together, and informed them that we would not be renewing that lease at the time that it comes due, and that we would be centralizing these operations. So once that lease expires, we will be exiting that facility, if not even shortly before it expires, getting this new facility up and running and operational.
Thank you, Brock. Jennifer?
One question for clarification. At our planning meeting, we talked about the $264,000 coming from nutrition services, but I think I just heard you say 165. Did you say two? Oh, sorry, my bad. All right, thanks.
That's okay. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brock or Jim, I don't know the timeline of the payment from the diversion authority and their entities to the district. Is that in advance, or is it after the fact? Do we have interim financing needs or not? Not that I'm just curious how that unfolds in a timely sense.
Members of the board, John, this week we have finalized signatures on contracts. I believe Paul actually and myself both signed for the district, and the Cass Joint Water Board as well as the Diversion Authority signed. So we have a contract signed with a closing date set for later this month. So we will receive payment. It's my understanding we will receive payment upon closing, which will happen yet in February, and then we will break ground on this facility as soon as the frost is out of the ground in the spring, and with plans to have it operational for the start of the 17 school year.
Other questions? I have a question or two. Brock, I noticed that we're using a group of professionals, including our construction management team and the architectural team that we've used a number of times in the past. Are we to the point where we do not necessarily solicit bids for that? Or, I know that they've done good work for us, and I'm not complaining about them all at all, but I'm just wondering how that approach goes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we do always put these out for bid. It was some time ago, you likely don't remember because this process started almost 2 years ago, where we put out a request for proposals for an architect and selected an architect. We did conduct a number of interviews, actually conducted a broader set of interviews for this project because it's a different project than a school. And so we had a number of interviews that we conducted. I believe 7 firms interviewed for the project. We did select an architect that we have been working with, and there was a lot of reasons for that. As far as the CM, we also brought that to the board, secured permission to go out for bids, for requests for proposals. We did that. Again, received 3 proposals. We interviewed all 3 of the candidates and selected accordingly. And again, it comes down to really lowest responsible bidder. And in an RFP process, price is only one component of that. Certainly, there's a lot of other things that come into play. And so we do the similar process for all of these facilities, and we put them out to bid and make sure that we do our due diligence in that regard.
Thank you, and maybe you could educate us a little bit, because you're right, we probably don't remember what those numbers were when they came in. We understand that price is only one component of a responsible bid, or a responsive bid, really. The question is, with the architects looking at 4.95% and the CM looking at 3.5%, we're looking at over $750,000 of this project being devoted to that. How were the other bids? I mean, is that a pretty normal number to see, 495 for an architect on this type of project? And I'm not presuming that it isn't. I'm just wondering for a little education.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is actually the lowest fee that we've seen from an architect perspective in the time that I've been here. The bids for an architect range from 4.95 to 7.5%. In this particular case, many times we've seen architect fees for new construction in the 5.5 to 6.5 range typically. By comparison, we're paying 6.5%, I believe it is, for an architect fee on the Eagles construction, as well as we did on Ed Clapp. This is a different type of facility. There's some precast to it, so it has a different feel than what we've done with school buildings. I certainly not an expert, so I wouldn't profess to say it's an easier construction, but I have had members of our design team say that it's simpler construction than a school facility. As far as CM fees, 3.5% is really about the average we see on all of our CM projects that we've done. And as you know, we've had a construction management philosophy here in this district at least as long as I've been here, and even dating prior to me. And typically, when we get those proposals, 3.5% is on the low end. Those probably don't, I haven't seen those push beyond maybe 4.25% or so from construction management services. But I would say that this is on the lower end combined fees than comparable facilities that we've constructed in the district.
Very good. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brock, I'm just curious. I was hoping we'd have some architectural renderings to look at. Are they available to us, or, you know?
Members of the board, John, my apologies. You were correct. You asked about that at planning, and we do have floor plan renderings and things. I can get those out to the board and make sure that they are in your hands. We can send them electronically. We can also put them on the portal and make sure that you have them. So my apologies.
No worries. But we all know there's times in the community where they say, well, there you go, building another Taj Mahal, you know, and I just don't want to all of a sudden be surprised and gosh, this is what it looks like. And not that I'm expecting any surprises, but that's all, Brock. Thank you.
Yeah, members of the board, John, great question. I want to point out that This facility will look much different than any school that we have built. As a matter of fact, aesthetically, it will look similar to either the Sanford building that is right next door to us that has the raked concrete finish on the outside, or the facility that the Park District built, which has a very different look than a lot of the, maybe the brick finishes and some of that you see on a school facility. And there's a number of reasons for that, because it's a different type of facility, a lot more heavy equipment involved in the comings and goings, things of that nature. So you definitely will see a difference, but at the same time, we are building, I'm gonna steal this from Jim Johnson, because it's one of my favorite things that he has said to me through the years. We're building a building for the next 50 or 100 years. We're not building a building for next year or the year after. And so we want to do it right, and we believe that we have a fair opportunity to do that.
And Jim, you're going to be here for those next 50 years, aren't you? And the creek don't rise, but that's actually why we're doing it, because the creek does rise. Brock, if, you know, from a person who hasn't really been involved in the planning of it, you know, if I were to sum it up, and that's why I asked you the question, is it seems as if we're going to have a new facility that's going to handle a number of very important district functions. We're going to do it at a price that was lower than what we estimated. We're going to have professional management that's on the low side of the cost, and we're going to be able to cut some of our other outside lease expenses as a result. All in all, when you look at that, I think it's a great job that you put together. John?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, and whether it's Dr. Schatz or Brock or Jim or whomever, you know, we're so many months down this path, you know, and folks just watching this moment in time might not know why we're doing this. You know, it's not like we set out to do this. Could somebody just put that in a nutshell for us for the sake of having it on the record?
Who would like to do that?
Yeah, I will.
Jim?
I was just getting ready to call a question, but I'm happy to answer that. We have to relocate a portion of our operations center because the flood control project through the center of town to protect downtown Fargo is actually going to cut right through at the corner of our building. And they're reconfiguring 2nd Street, which brings it closer in. And that made the rest of our building less functional than it would have otherwise been. And as the powers to be involved with the flood mitigation work looked at this project, they realized, yeah, we really can't just take 1/3 of their building from them and expect them to operate. And due to, you know, some long, somewhat difficult negotiations between Dr. Schatz and Brock and everybody else at the district level, the city and the diversion water board, the end result was a buyout of our facility and a relocation package, which is quite frankly part of the normal federal guidelines that go with this type of project. The only other option we would have had, as opposed to negotiating, accepting this buyout offer and relocation assistance, would have been to fight them and force them to use eminent domain, which is not in the best interests of anybody, including us. And at the end of the day, we would have ended up with about 2/3 of our building, because we would have lost 1/3, and in a much more difficult situation. So I think it's a win for the city in terms of flood protection. It's certainly a win for the district in terms of consolidating, as Paul rightfully noted. And I think with these bids, quite frankly, a win for our tax base, that we hit the market at the right time from a construction standpoint.
Thank you, Jim, for explaining that. Any other last-minute comments, or we are ready to vote on this? Okay, if there are no other comments, we're going to take a roll call vote, I believe, Anne Marie.
Paulson.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Benson.
Yes.
Goldenberg.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Knutson.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thanks for all the hard work, and we'll look forward to seeing this project come to fruition as well. At this point, unless the board would like to direct me otherwise, we only have a few items left on our agenda, and perhaps we could forego a break. Everyone okay with that? I think we can probably finish up within perhaps 10 minutes. Okay? Good. We'll move on to reviewing our EL 12 and EL 13, the two items that we all reviewed, and it's nice to see that all 9 people took time to review that. Robin, did you have a comment?
I would like to make a motion
I'm ready.
that we accept the monitoring reports of EL 12 and 13 as submitted.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we receive and approve the 2 monitoring reports, 12 and 13. And at this point, we're going to open it up to any further discussion. I know that there were a number of comments that were made that frankly get read anyway, but if anyone would like to make some additional comments or underscore those, now's your time. No one else? Going once? Okay. Let's see, we have to vote on this, don't we, Anne Marie? Yes, and we're going to take a roll call vote. Go ahead.
Strand,
Yes.
Benson,
Yes.
Goldenberg,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Myers,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Paulson,
Yes.
Boyd.
Yes.
The motion is passed, and we've received both of these monitoring reports. And at this point, we get to move on to board reports. And we'll have some committee liaison and correspondence reports. And Jim, do you want to take us through anything you've got to report on?
Sure, Paul, thanks. Couple of things to update people on. The state school board is having a meeting this Thursday out in Bismarck. We're also having the negotiations seminar on Friday. I think I'm the only person from Fargo heading out, but if any of you are going to be there, I'll see you there. The agenda items for the state school board meeting that might be of interest to people. One is kind of a free-flowing discussion about what role could North Dakota School Board Association take in terms of teacher professional development in light of North Dakota United deciding to no longer have a conference. So we're going to at least explore whether we have the staff time, energy, and then perhaps do a reach out to North Dakota United to see if there is something we can do to help in fill in that void. We're going to be taking a hard look at Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the new federal legislation that replaced No Child Left Behind. There are many components of the implementation of that that are going to really be dealt with in the legislative session coming up. And especially now that we have Anita on staff, we're going to try and leverage her talents to really take a lead role in helping craft some of that legislation from a school board perspective as they try to develop the fine print of what we're going to do there. And last but not least, I kind of alluded to this the other day, we're going to have a discussion about North Dakota State School Board Association taking the lead to place the REAs under the State Board of Public Instruction. In other words, have them report up to DPI. So I'll probably report back out what really comes of all those discussions at our next board meeting. Planning met, as you heard, as we were talking about the Operations Center. Most of our meeting was focused just on that, the Operations Center and the financing options for it. But we did start to take a look at some of the things in the Standard of Efforts report and really kind of framed for ourselves maybe what planning's objectives are going to be over the course of the rest of this winter and early spring, just in anticipation of making sure the board is prepared and at least has recommendations from planning regarding where we're going to be in future budget years absent any changes. This is not by any means in conflict or to sidetrack at all what Dr. Schatz and the Long Range Community Task Force on Financial Planner is going to be working on. It's really going to be a parallel looking at it from the board perspective of budget development and what we have to do. Our next regular meeting will be the first Friday in March. I don't know off the top of my head what that date is, but you're all welcome to come and join us at 7:30, first Friday in March, right in this very room. Pardon? Is it a staff day? You're not on vacation. You can just show up.
Jim, anything else to add from any of your other reports? I think that's what we've decided we're doing, is that we're kind of putting them all together. You're good there? Okay. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Native American Commission, they're really opening my eyes all the time with information about the state of health in their community. And much like, sorry, I'm getting a tickle in my throat, but much like all of us not all of us are from Fargo. We're from those little towns out there. The Native American communities are from tribes across the state. And it was just eye-opening to find out that they have 12 or 13 counties without a single dentist in North Dakota. So that was a topic of interest. They're working on budgets, committees, in a new sweat lodge. So that's the update from them. I'm gonna get some water rubbing.
Yeah, John, you should be on the health committee. John, do you have any more to add, or we're pretty much? Yes, sir. Rebecca?
Let's see. Okay, the Communications Committee met yesterday, and our role was to start looking at GP 2E. 3 of 5 of us were there. So GP 2E includes items such as rules governing the transaction of board business, the overall organization of the board, such as the process of electing the board president and the board vice president at our meeting in July. It addresses public participation at board meetings, the process to go about signing up for that participation, how long individuals are able to participate, speak at meetings, the procedures for filling board vacancies if someone were to leave their board position before their term is up, and also in regard to when a person's term is up. It's also considered to be vacant. And we also discussed a bit about the annual board liaison assignments. So we didn't finish our work, so we will continue our work at our next meeting, which is in March, on March 14th at noon. And the calendar committee will meet on Monday to continue talking about the 17-18 school year calendar. And I just wanted to remind people for the 16-17 school year that we have 1 week of spring break, and that information is listed on the website. I'll try to keep reminding people of that for their planning. My liaison report is in regard to Claire Barton Hawthorne. Next Monday, I will be spending the morning at Hawthorne and the afternoon at Claire Barton with the strategist again, because when I met with the strategist a couple of months ago, we did an office, we sat in the office and we visited about her role, but I wasn't able to do any additional engagement, so I'm going to sit in. I've been invited to sit in on the professional development day where they're going to be sharing data and interventions and other information with their staff, so that will be very interesting. And I received information regarding the Blue STEM announcement for the concert series, which is also next Monday, I believe at 10. Is that, am I not right on that?
It's in March.
Oh, it's in March. I was just going to say that I wasn't going to be able to be there, but I hopefully will be able to be there. In other reports, I plan to attend tomorrow the 3-minute thesis competition, a portion of that at NDSU for their graduate school. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Jennifer?
The Health Insurance Committee did meet on the 26th of January. However, I was not able to attend, so perhaps Brittany or Brock want to share some highlights.
I think we had a board meeting that night too, so we did
Yeah.
discuss at that.
Oh, you did? Okay,
At
good.
that meeting,
I wasn't
but happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Well, maybe
regarding-
I should be asking you then, since I've missed both. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Dr. Bob, I think we'll just go right around the room. Anything else that you have to report on?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Dr. Rachel?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Brittany?
No doctor?
I could. Calling
Nothing
Dr.
at
Brittany.
this time. I spoke as much as I want to at the last one, so I'm good, thanks.
Doc Brock, how about you?
Nothing further.
Yeah, honorary. Sorry, I can't do this stuff without having a few smiles from time to time. David?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, and Robin?
Governmental Affairs Committee did not meet last month because there was not a need for it, but a couple of dates coming up in the future. February 18th we still think is the interim education committee meeting in Bismarck. And last I heard, Brock was going to go, since I cannot. And so he will have lots to share. Maybe they're really exciting to attend. But February 23rd, the following meeting, I have been meeting with a number of district candidates that will be running in the June primaries and November generals. So that's enlightening. I can share some of those things at our next GAC meeting. The date will be determined soon for that meeting on February 23rd. We all received invitations to the after-school summit for the state of North Dakota. And so I am attending that in Bismarck on behalf of the board as well as my workplace. So I may be a bit tardy for that Tuesday, the 23rd's school board meeting, but I've already made Linda aware of that.
Thank you, Robin. And Dinah?
This week between meetings, I participated in the DECA competition as a judge at West Fargo Schools. That was definitely fun, so I encourage you to try and do that another time if you're invited. I spent last Friday at North High for my high school engagement, and I think that's it. I'm going to Bismarck tomorrow for ESPB.
Thank you, Dinah. And one thing, a couple of small things I would comment on. I guess we'll also go to Linda here in just a minute. But at the most recent governance meeting, we talked about a number of things coming up. And I think just to kind of keep the board posted, we're going to be excited, Dinah. I don't know if anyone's talked to you about this yet, but we're going to be having Dinah speak to us about her experiences on the ESPB board in the future. So that'll be, I think, a big eye-opener to have Dinah on the board and be able to talk to us directly about what's going on there. And with that, Linda, do you have things you might like to add?
I really don't have anything to report other than that it's been a little bit chilly here and I'm not complaining.
How chilly is it?
That's the end of my report.
Okay. Thanks, Linda, and thanks for joining us tonight and sticking with us during the meeting. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to add in terms of reports or other things? Big John.
Thank you. You know, the universe cooperates sometimes and says, John, you've been talking too much. But this is important stuff, this birthday report, you know. Next Tuesday is Brock's birthday, so on the 16th you can all send him like your best wishes. And then I expect we'll have birthday cake at our next meeting for Dr. Egri's birthday.
Great. Great. Any other comments, remarks? If not, our next meeting will be held at 5:30 on February 23 right here in the boardroom. If there are no other further comments, this meeting is adjourned.